Well, green flag lap now well underway here at Snetterton in preparation for our first race of the day for the Mazda MX-5 SuperCup. First of two 20-minute races, of course, here on the 200 circuit, the shorter of the two layouts at Snetterton. Here is a reminder of how the championship looks coming into this weekend. Henderson from Clements from Goddard. Do not count out Liam Murphy in fourth place, though. Only 17 points off the championship lead, and yet, some would say, to show his true potential this season. Look at John Munro there, Justin Newnham coming through. This is his home track as well, and so he'll be looking to get a couple of good results here. We've got a couple of onboard cameras as well. George Lyne here in the number 55 car, keeping a close eye on what he's up to in this race, and Andrew Caird as well, providing some onboard action from a little bit further down the order. I'm sure we'll check in with those two over the course of the race. Here's the grid then. It's Henderson from George Lyne on the front row of the grid. Good qualifying that from George, his best of the year. JJ Clements, Simon Goddard row 2. Gary Townsend and Liam Murphy make up the third row of the grid. Watch for Jack Harding down in 11th, finally with a steering rack that is fully fixed after a shunt at Silverstone earlier this year, and keen to get right back to the sharp end as he was racing at Silverstone before he had that collision with Will Chappell. 20 cars have made the journey to Snetterton then, and we're about to get underway with our first race of the day. Watch the lighting gantry. When the lights go from red to extinguished, we will be ready to go. Marshall there with the 5-second board, and we're about to go racing here at Snetterton for the first time today. 20 minutes as ever on the clock. The red lights go on, they go out now, and we're racing. Who gets the start from the front row? Is it Henderson or is it going to be George Lyne? They've rushed down towards the first corner. Well, it's not George Lyne, look, because he's slotted in behind Henderson. That's Simon Goddard coming around the outside into second place. JJ Clements up the inside of him as well. They lean on each other and Clements goes second. Goddard third. Liam Murphy then trying to go around the outside of George Lyne, who clatters over the curb and clatters into the side of Simon Goddard as well, up towards Montreal Hairpin. On board with George. We're in third place. We're going for second. The brakes are locked. He's sliding wide into the side of JJ Clements' number 88 machine. They both get out of shape, and Liam Murphy takes full advantage to come through from 5th to 2nd in all of that. So drama already. The Montreal Hairpin is a real pinch point on the Snetterton 200 circuit, and we saw a brilliant example there of just how much pinching there is on the opening lap of a busy race. Henderson leads down the straight then, with Murphy in second, Goddard's third, and that looks like Gary, yes it is, it's Gary Townsend in fourth place. Great stuff from Gary after one of his best qualifying efforts to get himself into the sharp end straight away. Fourth place then. Then it's George Lyne and then JJ Clements in behind. And that, in the number 20 car, trying to make a move, is James Aspinall, trying to find a way through the bomb hole, gets up the inside into the long right-hander at Coram, but has his nose very aggressively chopped off by JJ Clements. Good stuff. Through the right-hander into Murray's, the final turn that was reprofiled here at Snetterton several years ago to provide another overtaking opportunity, and out onto the centre straight. And you can see already that with all of the action going on behind him, Alan Henderson has really been able to get his head down and extend that margin. It's Gary Townsend who's going on the attack, crosses the line this time round in fourth, but he wants to get onto the podium at the expense of Simon Goddard. Goes to the outside into the first corner at Riches. That one doesn't quite work out though, and Goddard hangs on to that third spot for the time being. See James Aspinall, Justin Newnham, Andrew Caird and Jack Harding rounding out the top 10 as everybody runs wide through the first corner. You can see the windscreen wipers going on the cars. There is a bit of moisture in the air here today at Snetterton, and you can see the car sliding around as further evidence to that as well. Back on board with George Lyne, who does always seem to be in the thick of the action. He certainly has plenty of stories to tell at the end of the races, does George. He's in behind JJ Clements, who's in behind Gary Townsend down the Bentley straight, about to go underneath the bridge and into Brundles and Nelson, the S's at the end of the straight, and this is a very good overtaking opportunity. Is this where we're going to see JJ Clements make a move on the yellow and purple car of Gary Townsend? He tries, he's up the inside, he's got his nose alongside, he's got his whole car alongside, but now he's on the wrong side of the road into Nelson. As a result, he gets hung out to dry, and George Lyne says, thank you very much, I'll go up the inside of you and try and take the position. James Aspinall's now going to try and follow him through, but JJ Clements has raced Mazda MX-5s for long enough to know that you can't leave that door open for too long, otherwise you're going to lose several positions. Through the right-hander at Coram, windscreen wipers working backwards and forwards. We're on board with George Lyne again, and we're sizing Gary Townsend up for a move. So after a good start, Townsend starting to slip backwards. George Lyne a bit of a block pass, but he gets it done. Doesn't run too wide on the exit, but it's bottled that whole group up, hasn't it? Look, and JJ Clements now gets up alongside. He's going to try and go around the outside of Townsend. He's already done that. He's actually attacking George Lyne. Then Aspinall, Justin Newnham in there as well. They're three abreast down the pit straight towards Riches. And look at the run from James Aspinall right around the outside of the pair of them. Great stuff from the Paul Sheard racing driver. Gets the tail end stepping out into the first corner, but it works for him. And James Aspinall took full advantage of the situation that was developing in front of him then to gain several positions. look at this huge group of cars now going down towards the Montreal hairpin. Justin Newnham is in danger of getting swallowed up by the pack. Oh no, inside there's an accident. That's John Munro. Up into the air goes number 8 car of Andy Coombs. Justin Newnham's involved. I think Jack Harding got a bit of damage in that as well. Oh yes, and James Aspinall also, I think he may have been the trigger of that one. There was a lot of squeezing going on, and someone at the front of that big pack of cars got very sideways, and unfortunately the rest of them didn't have anywhere to go. That is Andrew Caird. Well, we said we had an onboard camera and we're hoping to get a look at some of the action that he would see throughout the course of the race. This isn't quite what we had in mind. You can see the big crack across the windscreen, the bonnet up obscuring his view. He's going to have to make his way very slowly back to the pit lane and get that repaired, if not for this race, but possibly for race 2. Look at the state of the car. Andrew Caird there, number 15. There isn't a straight body panel left on that car. He must have been right in the middle of all of that crunching that was going on. So who's left? Well, Henderson still lead from Murphy second and Goddard third. Everyone else behind that was involved in this shunt, it seems. So it's rather thinned out the field. We'll see who comes through as the safety car is deployed, unsurprisingly, due to the amount of stricken Mazda MX-5s and bits of Mazda MX-5 that are all over the track at the Montreal hairpin. George Lyon's come through all of that in 4th look. 5th is Clement, so he survived. Townsend is 6th. Then 7th place coming through. Just there in the purple car is Robert Way. Jack Harding survived, but I think got a bit of damage. Russell Tamplin is 9th, and Richard Wicklen has now inherited a top 10 position after all of that. But the safety car out. This will bunch the field back together. So those who had to take avoiding action to avoid that shunt at the hairpin on the previous lap now are able to regain the lost time. It looked like John Munro was recovering perhaps back to the pit lane. He certainly took quite a bit of damage in the incident there. The safety car called for on board with Andrew Caird as he heads into the pit lane, waves members of the team over. Now, what are they going to be able to do about this? You can see the rain continuing to fall as well. I don't think Andrew is best pleased with that, but I think he's basically saying there was nothing he could do. The bonnet's going to be put down. They're going to try and get him back out in the race, but I think there's too much damage really for that to be a viable option. There's Justin Newnham. Well, he's not particularly enjoying his home round, is he? He's being supported as ever by his wife and son, and they're not going to be too pleased watching this. Now, let's see what happened. I think James Aspinall gets turned, doesn't he, in front of the pack. The first car in is then Justin Newnham, and there you can see the 8 car of Andy Coombs getting up onto the, just locking wheels with John Munro. On board with Caird, this should be a good view, shouldn't it? Yes, there we are. First contact is Justin Newnham and James Aspinall, and then of course everyone slams on the brakes and no one has anywhere to go. And Andrew Caird had quite significant contact from front and rear, but had nowhere to go, and unfortunately a lot of innocent victims of what was a pretty innocuous bit of contact anyway. But the safety car is out. Some of the drivers have survived that, and they'll be ready to go racing in just a couple of laps' time. Here we go then, the safety car's pulled into the pit lane. Alan Henderson has already gone, and Liam Murphy is trying to go with him out through the final turn at Murray's they go, hopping over the curb. Don't run too wide over the exit though, because that'll lose you a lot of speed down the pit straight. Green flag's flying then. We're racing once more at Snetterton with just over half the race to go. And there go your leading group of cars. Henderson leading the way from Murphy second. 3rd place is Simon Goddard. 4th place George Lyon, having started second. He's been up and down like a fiddler's elbow in the first half of the race. He'll be looking to have more upward progress as the race goes on. That's the 93 of Russell Tamplin, who's racing in the Paul Sheard guest car this weekend at Snetterton. Up towards Montreal, who's going to make the move this time? That's Robert Way in the purple car taking a defensive line, because Jack Harding is trying to go around the outside of him. And ones to watch for from the back, look, James Aspinall and John Munro, numbers 20 and 23, both involved in that shunt, will be looking to try and regain the lost ground if they can. Dust being kicked up in the background as the leaders weave their way back and forth down the Bentley Straight, where slipstreaming is really going to take effect over the course of the day. I think it's George Lyon trying to use that slipstream to find a way past Simon Goddard through the left at Brundle. They stay single file for the time being. JJ Clements just being dropped slightly. Jack Harding has got past Robert Way, so the Wayward Motorsport purple number 5 car has dropped down a further position. Jack Harding making more progress through Coram, and we're watching George Lyon. We're back on board with George Lyon, in fact fighting the wheel through that endless right-hander. Are we close enough to attack Simon Goddard? Not this time around. The car's sliding around under brake. Of course, you're braking on a turn through Coram, which makes it even more difficult. Gary Townsend behind runs very wide out of the final turn. That's going to kill his straight line speed down the pit straight and could allow Jack Harding to close in and attack for that position down towards Richards. fastest lap of the race for Alan Henderson, and he's trying to break the toe. He knows that Liam Murphy, with a whiff of that slipstream, will be right back on his case. So Henderson trying to do what he did, if you remember, back to the first round of the series at Silverstone on the national circuit. Henderson was able to break the toe and leave everybody else to fight for second place. At the moment, Murphy's going with him, but more fastest laps like that for Henderson, and he could be able to build up a bit of a margin. Flick through the left-hander out onto the Bentley straight. George Lyon changing up the gears. See, the visibility not great, is it? There's a lot of fluid that's been smeared across the windscreen of the number 55 car, but we can still see the effect of the slipstream to some extent there. We are closing fractionally onto the back of the number 46 of Simon Goddard. Blendini prepared car, of course. It's the top Blendini car in this race. Indeed, 3 different teams filling out the top 3 positions as we are now 8 and a bit minutes from the checkered flag. Further back, the Townsend train is growing. Jack Harding, Robert Way. We've got the 93 car, Russell Tamplin, in there as well. And about 6 or 7 cars are getting themselves together to fight for the positions towards the back end of the top 10. Jack Harding, who's running with a slightly different livery this weekend because it was a very last-minute fix of the car after he's had 1 or 2 niggly little problems throughout the course of the season. Jack, who also got engaged in the break between Castlecombe and Snetterton, so congratulations to Jack. And has that perhaps brought about that extra bit of maturity in his driving? We'll find out. He's always been very, very quick, just unlucky, and he's now starting to attack Gary Townsend up towards Riches. Meanwhile, just behind him, that's Russell Tamplin trying to go around the outside of Robert Way. They're ducking and diving all over the place. Harding goes from the outside to the inside and makes the move stick. Good stuff then. Finds way up into 6th place. Does he run wide on the exit? No. It's actually Townsend that runs wide, and Robert Way, with bits flapping off his car, look, gets up the inside of him, but then Russell Tamplin goes up the inside of the pair of them. The 76 of Richard Wickland getting involved too. This is too busy for words, isn't it? Wickland eases Townsend off the road, and he'll lose further positions. Back on board with George Lyon then, and he's still trying to find his way onto the podium. Up behind Simon Goddard, we are going to peek to the left-hand side, which is the inside into Brundle, but he's getting squeezed right over to the left-hand edge of the track. Simon Goddard was very robust in his defence there and would not let the youngster through. George Lyon, the 20-year-old from Leicestershire, who has come from karting. He's been karting for quite some time now. Nearly 10 years ago he started racing in karts, moved to the SuperCup last year, racing for Mike Comber. And so Mike has taught him well, because he's certainly one of the outright quickest drivers in the championship, I think. Just another driver who's had a fair bit of bad luck throughout the course of the season and is looking now for his first podium finish. I'll wait and see if he can do it. He's certainly pressuring Simon Goddard in front of him. But Goddard's not really letting Liam Murphy go either, is he? And this is indeed starting to allow Henderson to pull a bit of a gap at the front of the field. Slightly defensive line, a middle of the road line taken by Goddard through Riches. And is that going to compromise his exit speed, I wonder, allow George Lyon to attack into Montreal? Well, Goddard clearly feels so, because he's defending again into the hairpin. George Lyon with a very late look to the inside again, snatches an inside break, which is easily done, into a corner that really doesn't have all that much grip, even in the dry. He's right there, he just can't find a way through. Great defensive driving this from Simon Goddard, who's been racing in the Mark 1 Championship this year. Indeed got himself a win at Rockingham in the wet recently. And Simon, who's found himself in 3rd place in the points coming into Snetterton in the Super Cup, due to, in large, a lot of consistent driving and staying out of trouble. So another podium will go a long way towards helping his championship challenge as well. There's JJ Clements in the background, you can see, in 5th position, just not quite on the pace this weekend. He is being followed now by the 93 of Russell Tamplin, who's got himself to the head of the next little pack, look, ahead of Jack Harding, and then the recovering James Aspinall in the number 20. Bodywork flapping off all of the cars from as witness marks from the shunt earlier on. Jack Harding's perhaps coming off the worst. That's going to be acting as a big old air brake, isn't it, down the back straight and down the pit straight as well. But he's not slowing him down through the twisty stuff, and he's able to really close in on Russell. Russell Tamplin knows it and defends into Murray's. The car slithers out a bit wide though. That's going to hurt his momentum onto the straight. And has Jack Harding been able to perhaps build up another challenge? Further back, Robert Way, Jeff Gourier involved in their scrap. As back at the front, George Lyon has finally found a way past Simon Goddard. 3rd place now for George. Goddard had nothing he could do to fight that one, did he? And as they head towards Montreal, George Lyon now sets his sights on Liam Murphy, but again locks up going into Montreal. He's going to drift out wide. Where's Simon Goddard? He's not at the inside, so George got away with that one. Check back in with the Tamplin, Aspinall and Harding scrap. and it's Aspinall who's got ahead of Jack Harding. So having thought that Jack might have been about to make an attack, it hasn't worked, and he's lost a position. Down the Bentley Straight, you can see Andy Coombs' car stranded to the right-hand side of the track there after his involvement in the safety car creating shunt. As the leaders start to spread themselves out slightly, it's the fight for 6th place that really is attracting most of the interest. That's John Munro, another driver held up earlier on, who's attacking Jack Harding as James Aspinall goes up the inside of another one of the Paul Sheard cars. 2 teammates at play here, and Aspinall goes through. Jack Harding runs very wide in his defence from John Munro, and they somehow keep it on the black stuff, but only just, and that's dropped them ever further behind the cars in front. Alan Henderson, though, has done exactly what he wanted to, hasn't he? He's been able to break out of the tow and escape from the chasing pack, leaving them to fight over the minor podium places. And it's been another silky smooth drive from the AK Automotive driver, who leads the championship in what has been an extremely competitive start to the season. Alan has really been the one who consistently is able to get up there and win races, and whilst that's not all it takes to win a championship, you've got to be consistent as well. Winning races certainly helps, and Alan has done more of that than anybody else has so far this year. This would be win number 4 if he can hang on from now to the checkered flag, but George Lyon, I don't believe it. George Lyon's gone off from 3rd place, having finally got past Simon Goddard. He's thrown it all away at Riches. Oh dear, so George, yet more bad luck striking for the number 55 driver. John Munro there running wide at the Montreal hairpin. Jack Harding's nipped back up the inside of him. On board with George Lyon. Let's see what happens. Is it another lock-up? No, he lost the rear on turning, didn't he? Perhaps a little bit more moisture in the air there than there had been on previous laps. And it's a very graceful but very frustrating spin off onto the grass at the first corner. Selects gear and gets going again, but plenty of places lost, unfortunately, for George. He didn't really deserve that. Back to this fight. Jack Harding's now got John Munro to play with. I think it is raining harder as well now, isn't it? The track is definitely getting less and less grippy. Henderson heads into Murray's. You can see the top 3 are now, top 4 really, very spread out indeed, but it's the fighting behind that's been extremely intense. Out across the start-finish line comes Alan Henderson, and as he crosses the line, he will have one more lap to go. So Henderson starts the final lap of the first race of the weekend. Liam Murphy in 2nd. Now, is he being caught by Simon Goddard? I think he is, isn't he? As it gets wetter and wetter, Liam Murphy's pace is dropping, and Simon Goddard senses an opportunity here to snatch 2nd place and a handful more points as well. It's only 2 points difference in the championship, but when there's only 12 points covering the top 3, every point counts. Alan Henderson just needs to keep it on the road for the last, well, now less than 2 miles of the Snetterton circuit. Further back, Richard Wicklin and Russell Tamplin. Russell Tamplin has been in plenty of fighting, hasn't he, over the course of this race. Gary Townsend has another grassy excursion there as he tried to avoid a sideways Jeff Gurrier into Montreal, and Townsend, after a grassy excursion up here at Montreal a few laps ago, is busy trying to work his way back up the order. That will put him into the top 10. But Alan Henderson has, well, he's not had no one to fight with over the course of the race. He has had some challengers earlier on, but for the second half of the race, really, he's been able to assert his authority and assert his position at the front of the field. And barring any last-moment errors, it looks as though the number 90 car is going to be going back to the top step of the podium. He was slightly disappointed, I think, with race 2 at Castlecombe. He won race 1 at Castlecombe and then got jostled down the order a little bit to 4th place in race 2, but he's back to winning ways here at Snetterton. Alan Henderson comes down to take the checkered flag in round number 7 of the BRSCC Mazda MX-5 SuperCup. It's win number 4 of the season for Alan, and he will extend his championship lead. 2nd place, I think, is going to go to Liam Murphy, is it? Let's have a look. Who's going to come across the line in 2nd? Is it Murphy or Goddard? It's Goddard! Goddard got him! So Simon Goddard got 2nd place on the last lap. Liam Murphy 3rd. So as soon as it started getting wet, Liam's pace really wasn't up to scratch, was it? And he's dropped down to the bottom step of the podium. JJ Clements is 4th. And look at that, James Aspinall, despite triggering, or certainly being part of the trigger for that big shunt in the first half of the race, he actually is able to recover to snatch 5th place. That's fantastic stuff for Aspinall. There's Munro, Tamplin, Wicklin and Gary Townsend, with Jack Harding rounding out the top 10 by the looks of it. So Jack gets himself a decent handful of points, and a race which again unfortunately saw a little bit more damage incurred on the car. And the rest of the field start to stream through. There you can see Ray Worley towards the back. It looks like he's had a good race-long scrap with Jeremy Crook, doesn't it? Jeremy in the 77 presenter-sponsored car. But it is Alan Henderson who takes another victory and puts himself a little bit further clear of the competition championship-wise. We'll see confirmation of the points in a little while, but with Goddard's second, of course, that minimises the damage that he's done. He's taken some points out of JJ Clements, but Goddard, another consistent result. Here is confirmation of the result. It's Henderson from Goddard, from Murphy, JJ Clements and James Aspinall, Russell Tamplin, Richard Wickland, Gary Townsend, Jack Harding and Jeff Gurrier round out the top 10. John Munro there in 11th place was briefly disqualified for a driving incident but was then reinstated. George Lyne, though, unfortunately was disqualified. That was for contact with JJ Clements earlier on, and so he is not classified in the result.
I wasn't sure if it was on today because I've had a little bit car bother sticking brakes and stuff, so I've had to put brake pads in that I've never used before. So it was a steep learning curve on the first few laps, but it was all right until it rained and it got a bit snatchy, but I think everybody was in the same boat, to be fair, because everybody went out on, I assume everybody went out on full dry setup, and then when the rain came down it was just so slippy. It was just like half speed, it seemed like, most of the time, but we got there. I think I got lucky on the first couple of laps, stayed out of all the carnage that happened behind. I don't know exactly what happened, but it looked like there was a fair bit, and then the safety car came out for another incident. Yeah, hopefully it's a bit like that next time. A nice, smooth, easy race.
It was kind of a race of two halves, as the cliche goes, really. Good start, I was quite happy with the start, but the first lap was quite chaotic. There was a lot of shenanigans going on, really, and pretty hardcore the first lap. A few people went off. It took a couple of laps to settle in, really, and then it felt okay, so just kind of getting in the groove, getting to a reasonable pace, and I was quite happy sort of just sitting there really in third and just working my way through. And then it started to rain a little bit, and that changed everything. Safety car added a bit of spice. I didn't get a brilliant start behind the safety car, but I think I ended up where I was sort of before the safety car came out, so I couldn't really complain. Then it was just a battle, really. I lost a place to George, and then he went straight on at the end of the first straight. Just the rain came down and he was just going too quick, really. So the last couple of laps were interesting, exciting and slippery, and just managed to get past Liam on the last lap, and then he had a bit of a gearbox problem, so very happy with second.
Got a good start. Then when the safety car came out, I was like, a bit worried, but got a good race start, and then just held it, yeah.
How did the rain affect you?
It wasn't really the rain, I wasn't really that fussed about it. I was just near the end there, we lost third gear, so I had to, just nurse it home, so happy to be back here, yeah.
How's that going to help with the second race coming up? What are you going to do about the gearbox?
We'll swap it in between races now, and then, hopefully carry on with another good start, and then back, hopefully on top step next.